What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run 2 programs called Inner Knowing and Good Life Designed for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals on tools and frameworks for creating an intuitive practice and for creating self-mastery in their life. As someone who's helped countless entrepreneurs open doors of possibility that they never thought existed, I've seen these strategies transform people's lives. The best part is that you'll 10x your output, unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly to overcome your limiting beliefs. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition, and set a new framework on how to live your best life. And you'll get access to guided meditations that I have personally created that are not available anywhere else. We'll create a new self-concept that you can practice moving forward. This method is so effective that even if you don't have a lot of time or if you think you're not ready for a change, these frameworks and methodologies will still work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can also check out what some of the previous clients had to say about our time together. It's first come, first serve, and I hope to see you there. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and higher consciousness. Today's episode is with Steve Farber, the former vice president of the legendary management guru Tom Peters' company, and is the founder and CEO of the Extreme Leadership Institute, an organization devoted to helping its clients develop award-winning cultures and radical results. The Institute's team has helped over 25 companies earn a ranking on the best places to work list. And he is also ranked on Inc.'s listing of the top 50 leadership and management experts in the world, number 1 on Huffington Post's 12 business speakers to see. He's also a best-selling author, a popular keynote speaker, and a seasoned leadership coach. I'm so excited to welcome him to the show. He's written 4 books, including Love is Just Damn Good Business, which we're going to talk about today. So welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
So, Steve, to kick it off, what do you mean when you say that love is a hardcore business principle?
I have no idea. I thought it just sounded provocative. Seriously, the idea that is become conventional wisdom in the business world, that love is something that is anathema to business. In other words, love has no place in business. That seems to be the prevailing attitude on the surface. The reality is that a competitive advantage in any business, whether it's a Fortune 100 company or a solopreneur, the advantage starts with that company's customer loving what they do for them. Because anything short of that doesn't engender loyalty. It doesn't engender word of mouth. It doesn't engender any kind of long-term productive relationship that we're looking for with all of our customers. So this idea that love is a hardcore business principle starts with understanding that and acknowledging that we want our customers or clients to love what we do for them, not to be satisfied with it, not to be okay with it, but to love it. If we start with that premise, then we've got to ask the question, how do we make that happen? How do we make it happen in a meaningful and sustainable way over time? And I believe we have to kind of back it out. In order to make that experience that a customer is going to love, in order to make that happen, we have to create an environment or a culture, as we like to call it, that people love working in. If I don't love working here, it's very difficult for me to create an experience my customers are going to love. And as a leader within a company or an owner of a company or somebody of influence in a company, I can't create or contribute to a culture that people love being in unless I love it myself first. Love it, love the people I work with, love the customers, love myself first. So it all gets very personal very quickly. But if we can accomplish all those things, it's a hugely profitable and advantageous business approach.
That is so powerful, Steve. It's something that I think in the context, a lot of business owners and founders and CEOs don't really have that mindset, that especially about the love, like having your customers love your product, love your service, but starting that first in the culture itself of the company. It seems like culture, generally speaking, seems like something that companies think of only when things are not going well. So I actually love to know, when do you actually come in to consult with and work with businesses? Is it because of this issue of a lack of culture, or when employees are not satisfied? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me back up and give a little context for it, because my work, there's a lot of different facets to my work. So at the core of what I do is about helping people, business people primarily, although I do extend beyond that into the field of education and nonprofit and that kind of a thing. But business is my main playground. The core of my work is helping them, these business people, to understand, and the word I like to use is operationalize this idea of this practice, this discipline of love in business, right? So that takes many different forms. I do a lot of keynote speaking, where I'll come in for an hour, hour and a half, whatever it is, and give a few ideas and entertain the masses for a little bit. And it goes all the way through, and then writing books and all that. And then it goes all the way through to the basis of your question, which is companies who really want help to put these ideas into practice. So I will say that for the most part, it's either a company that is already doing pretty well, and they're kind of already on board with this idea, or at least with this intent, and really want to drive it forward. So I have a client right now. We have a 2-year contract with them, and they already started down this path before they called us in. So we're just kind of helping them to really expand it and supercharge what they've already done. And then there are other companies that, it's kind of like our culture isn't what it should be, and we really know it's important to do something significant with it. But there's a couple of other facets to this that I just want to be clear about. The company that I won't work with is the company that says, I'm not so sure about this love thing, but we really need fixing. So come in and do what you can. In other words, I'm not really in the business of convincing people. I'm more in the confirmation business than the convincing business. So for people that say, no, I get it, that love thing is really important, I just need help doing it, that's my ideal client. But if they're like, nah, I think this is kind of cool, but all these other people think this is a bunch of crap, so come in and, see if you can change their mind. I'm not interested in that. It's not that it's not possible. It's just that it's not what I love to do. I think if we ever find ourselves in a position where we have to convince somebody that love is a good thing, I don't know that that's time well spent, because there are plenty of people who already get it and just want the help with it. Right. So the other thing I want to say is every company, whether it's a company of 1 or a company of 100,000, every company has a culture, whether you pay attention to it or not. There's always a culture. It's just oftentimes not very intentional, or it's not the kind of culture that supports what it is we're trying to do as an organization. So we're never in the business of creating a culture. We are in the business, and when I say we, I mean anybody that does this kind of work. It might be evolving the culture, it might be shifting it, but there's always something that we're starting with. Because a culture is really, it's a combination of kind of expectations and behaviors and your systems, policies, procedures, history, all of that. And every company has all of that. And you're right. There are a lot of companies, a lot of places that don't really start to look at culture until the red flags are popping up everywhere.
Right.
And that's why, when I'm working with entrepreneurs who are starting a new company, what I encourage them to do is to be very intentional about their culture right in the beginning, because a lot of entrepreneurs will skip that step. They get very excited about their product and the impact they're going to have on the world and what their marketplace is going to be, which is all important. But the culture is going to start evolving right from day one, and it's just going to happen. And it's not an uncommon thing for people to start a company and then have it grow. And there's just kind of a natural kind of a, family and cool feeling. And then they start to grow and they acquire another company. And it's like, what happened to the good old days, man? It's not the same as it used to be around here, because the culture has changed, because there always was a culture, but nobody paid attention to it in the beginning to say, as we grow, these are the things, these are the values, these are the expectations, these are the rituals, whatever, that we need to hold on to no matter how big we get. That's intentional culture. And in my experience and in my rather strong opinion, that culture, no matter what form it takes, needs to have at its core love. Because if we're creating something that people don't love being a part of, then it doesn't matter what the bells and whistles are in the culture. It's not what it could be.
Such a powerful point, Steve. That makes a lot of sense. And this intentional kind of culture piece is so profound, because I think a lot of people sort of react to their culture as it grows. Like they're not intentional about who they hire and whether it fits into their culture. And especially, like you said, when all these moments happen, acquisitions or, new divisions, new products, that piece usually is kind of like the least prioritized item. I'm curious, why don't leaders prioritize love as a business concept?
I think the main reason is we've been conditioned, and again, that's the big we, and I'm perhaps overgeneralizing, but we've been conditioned to believe that is not a valid business question. It's as simple as that. We're not taught in business school, and therefore we're not taught by our mentors and by other business people that we need to be putting love at the forefront. So we don't. We look at all the other things, which are also important. And along with that is kind of this baggage that says, not only have we just not paid attention to it, it's kind of like you shouldn't do it. So people get almost embarrassed by it. I mean, I know, I remember quite a number of years ago now, I'd met somebody who read my first book, The Radical Leap, and which is all about, love. LEAP stands for love, energy, audacity, and proof. So it's really all about love at its core. Everything that I've ever written is really. And it made a huge impact on him as a leader. And he was an entrepreneur, owned his company. But he never told anybody about the book. He literally kept it in his drawer because he was afraid that people would, judge him as some kind of a, touchy-feely guy. Forget about the fact that he's incredibly successful in building a great company, right? He was literally afraid, embarrassed to share those ideas with people. And I don't remember what it was exactly that happened, but finally he said, that's ridiculous. So he turned into like an evangelist and he's giving everybody the book. But it's because of the conditioning, right? We're not taught that we should. But the interesting thing about this, Yasmin, is that when I sit down and talk with business leaders one-on-one, I hear love all the time, but just naturally part of their vocabulary. Hey, tell me about your team. Oh, I love them. Tell me about your product. Oh, I love this. It's amazing. Love, 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 love. And then you put a spotlight on them or stick them up on a stage or put a microphone in front of them and say, tell me about your team. And now it's, they're great. Okay. What happened to the love thing? So I can't prove this, but here's what I believe. I believe that most people already believe that love is good business. The problem is that most people don't believe that most people believe that love is good business. So we stay in the shadows. We don't talk about it. So that's why what I mean when I say I'm in the confirmation business, not the convincing business. For me to come along and say, hey, that instinct that you already have, that impulse that you already have but haven't acted on, this love thing, you should do that. So it's not like, yesterday this person was an asshole and today they love people. The love has always been there. They just have been suppressing it because they thought they were supposed to. So it's about unleashing this in people. So I really believe that we are at a junction point right now where I'm certainly not the only person who talks about this sort of thing and works with it. It's becoming more and more acceptable, and it's becoming more and more part of the mainstream conversation. Not quite there yet, but we're getting there, and I think that's really exciting and bodes well for our future.
Yeah, that's a powerful point, Steve. And I didn't realize that, but yeah, that's true. A lot of people do talk about love in the conversation, but oftentimes you don't actually hear that word in a larger presentation or kind of a more professional kind of presentation.
Yeah, or if you do, you hear it as part of a marketing campaign, right? Like
Right.
Subaru love, and Southwest Airlines is probably most famous for it. Their stock exchange symbol is LUV. So you hear it as part of every so often this marketing kind of messaging to the world, which is great. But this, of course, has to go way beyond the messaging and into the practice.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm curious, so how can companies invest in love, and what are some of the ways that you coach companies to actually take that next step?
So there's a really simple question that I encourage everybody to ask. And in many ways, it's really the core of everything that we do with companies. And that is to put your business, every aspect of your business, through a filter that kind of a love filter. So the question would be something like, what should love look like in the way we do business? Or if we really loved our customers, what would we do differently? Or how do we create an environment? What are the things we need to do where our employees will love working here? And if you put everything through that filter, you generate the ideas that are going to work for you. So again, the fundamental question is, what should love look like in the way that we do business? And then engage as many people as possible in answering that question and see what you come up with. There are thousands of ways to apply this. So it's not like, okay, here's the love formula, do X, Y, and Z, and everything will be taken care of. It's not quite that simple. And it is messy, and it takes a lot of trial and error. But really, in essence, this is about raising the standards for what we do every day. So, for example, if we, again, the conventional wisdom for a long time is, if you want to get great ideas for your business, you should ask the people who are doing the work, people on the front line, right? So if you want to improve your customer service, you should ask your customer service people, what should we do to improve our customer service? Because they're the ones who are getting the direct feedback from customers all day long, et cetera, okay? Nothing new there. But if you bring together a team of people and you say, okay, let's have a brainstorming session, what should we do to improve our customer service? You'll get some great ideas, I'm sure. But if you ask the question a little bit differently, like, for example, what can we do to create an experience that our customers are going to love? What you've just done there is raised the standards. You've raised the bar. And I think sometimes people get afraid of love, the whole idea of love, because they think it's too, it's about, let's just make things easy for people so that they'll love us and not do anything difficult. Or, it's exactly the opposite of that. Love is such a high standard. So to say, yeah, let's improve our customer service, that's pretty freaking easy to do. But for them to come back and say, I love this, that requires a whole other level of ideas and performance and execution and everything else. So it really starts with that, and then you put everything through that filter, ideally. So we look at how we hire people and the kind of people that we hire. We look at how we give performance appraisals. What is it? What are the behaviors that we're recognizing and rewarding? We look at the way we run meetings. We look at our physical environment, and all through that filter, is this going to cultivate more love or not? And if it doesn't, then the question is, yeah, but do we need to do it anyway? Which is a valid question. And if not, then we're not there yet. Let's come up with a different idea.
Powerful, powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what about the ROI on love? Can we measure this, or has this been measured?
Well, so there have been a lot of a ton of studies on, for example, employee engagement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not necessarily using the word love, although I think there are a few studies. I can't quote them off the top of my head, but certainly not the same volume of research like on employee engagement, for example. So let's just take that for a second. The reason that every company chases after that engagement number is because we know that employees who are engaged are more productive, more creative. If you have high engagement scores, you have less turnover. You have people showing up in the ways that we want them to show up, et cetera. So to me, it's a proxy kind of a measure, because love is simply another and perhaps a higher level of engagement. If I love this place, if I self-describe as loving this work and loving my team, I am almost by definition more engaged. So I'll point to, when I go in and work with a company and they say, how are we going to measure this? My question is going to be, what are you measuring now? What are you measuring? What's important to you? Well, we want to, we're having trouble with turnover, or, we need to improve our market share, whatever. Okay, well, if we do this work and we increase the love factor all the way around, those things should go up.
Okay.
That's it. It's as simple as that. So when I get pushback on that, which I've had from I'm thinking of one particular client in the very beginning, it was like, yeah, but how do we know that it's because of this if those numbers go up? My answer is, do you care? I mean, seriously, do you really care? I don't care if you want to give me credit for it or not. But if the numbers are going up, we're all going to be happy. So for the research folks, I always point to those the engagement studies, and there's another body of work that's really very much research and measurement based, which is actually from my most significant mentors, Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner, who are the co-authors of a book called The Leadership Challenge, which is about to come out in its 5th edition, I think. So their research is really around leadership, effective leadership, and its impact on organizations. And one of the practices that they identified is something that they call encouraging the heart. And there have been now hundreds of thousands of case studies, personal best case studies, so many doctoral dissertations, just an incredible body of research validating the effectiveness of these leadership practices that Kouzes and Posner identified. And again, it comes down to, very similar to what you find in the engagement research, is that people that score higher as leaders in these elements of leadership get better results measured in all kinds of ways. So I think we're at the point now where it is very difficult to say, that people stuff doesn't matter. It makes no difference whatsoever. That is patently false. So I'm not so concerned about the linearity of does more love equal better results? It'd be cool to have some more research on that, but we know that people who feel more fulfilled at work do a better job. It's as simple as that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Steve, I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about what you're calling extreme leadership and what it means to take a radical leap, two concepts that you talk about in your book, The Radical Leap.
Right. To me, so I've been in the field of, I guess we could loosely call it leadership development for 30 years. And that doesn't mean I have it all figured out. I don't claim to be the guy with all the answers, not by a long shot. But it is very clear that the quality of any organization, the quality of any team, the quality of any community, the quality of any family comes down to the quality of its leadership. So I focused, as my career evolved, I focused more and more on leadership because that's the leverage point. There are a few myths about leadership, though, that I want to dispel before I go any further with this. The first myth is that leadership is simply a function of position or title, and it's not. In other words, you don't need a title in order to lead. You don't need to have a position of authority in order to be a leader. And by the same token, just because you're in a position of authority doesn't automatically make you a leader. We've all known some people that have very impressive titles and positions that are just god-awful leaders. And I can't tell you how many people I've met who have no positional authority. Nobody reports to them. They're not a boss. They're not a manager. They're not a supervisor. They're just out there doing the work, and they're great leaders.
Yeah.
By virtue of who they are, how they live, how they show up for work, and their ability to influence people around them to change things for the better. So extreme leadership, which is the name of my company and the name of my platform, is really, in essence, kind of a redundant or repetitive phrase, because there should be no reason to modify the word leadership with the word extreme, because real leadership by its nature is extreme, because it's about the act of transformation. It's about growing and evolving and pushing the proverbial envelope and changing the world for the better, whether it's the literal capital W world or the world of your team, for that matter. There's such a thing as a small W world, but that's already extreme stuff. So when I was trying to pull things together to really give people some ideas and perspectives so that really significant things will happen, that's when I started playing around with that phrase. And because the idea is that if you call yourself a leader, if you think you're leading, but it doesn't feel extreme, it doesn't feel like you're taking a risk, it doesn't feel like you're experiencing what I like to call the OSM, which is spelled capital O, capital S, exclamation mark, capital M, which stands for the oh shit moment. If you're not experiencing that with some frequency, you're probably not leading, because leadership requires our putting ourselves out there on the line, not necessarily to the point of life or death. I mean, depending on the context. In a business context, it's certainly not. But it's still that feeling of kind of fear and exhilaration and all that. That's what extreme does to you. So again, extreme leadership is really just my way of saying real leadership. And what the extreme leader does, in my experience, is that person with conscious intent cultivates love, generates energy, inspires audacity, and provides proof. So that's the LEAP framework. So energy is the juice, the enthusiasm that we bring to bear on the things that we do. Audacity is, I define it as a bold and blatant disregard for normal constraints in order to change the world for the better. So that audacious intent and audacious actions to really change things. And finally, proof is really about, not only is it about the results that we achieve, but it's about proving that we really mean what we say, because all these things are easy to talk about. So I could talk a good love game, but I need to prove it through my behaviors and my actions. There needs to be congruence between the words that come out of my mouth and the behaviors that people experience from me.
Hmm.
So that's LEAP: love, energy, audacity, and proof. That's the extreme leadership framework, I guess you could say. And or another analogy would be it's kind of like an operating system that has thousands of applications to it, lots of ways to apply it.
Fascinating. Wow. So I love the concept of the OSM, the oh shit moment, because I think a lot of people oftentimes they get comfortable and they sort of shy away from risk or perceive it, in the words of, kind of like as a judgment call, like it's not going well, it's not working. That's why things are kind of falling apart. But I think that there needs to be a level of risk and experimentation in order to actually, like you said, leap and move forward and also regulate yourself through those, highs and lows, like all businesses have, right?
Yeah. Well, every business book that you pick up, and I don't think that's much of an exaggeration, will tell you that it's important to take risks, right?
Right.
It's like, yeah, of course you take a risk. That's how you learn. You take a risk. The part that we don't really pay much attention to is what that feels like. So intellectually, I can understand that, yeah, I need to take a risk, but it's not an intellectual decision most of the time. A lot of times my intellect will say, yeah, that's really good idea. Yes, no guarantee it's going to work, but I think this idea is fantastic. But then I don't do it. And when I ask myself, why aren't I doing it? And the answer very simply is because I'm scared to. That's perfectly natural. So what I'm suggesting is if the only reason you could think of to not try something, to not do something different is because the idea scares you, then that's the reason to do it. That's the pursuit of the OSM. So it's about reframing that experience and saying, "Oh, my instinct is to interpret the OSM as a sign that something is wrong, and therefore I shouldn't do it or I should run away from it," which sometimes is true. But it's reframing it and saying, "Oh, that's a sign that something is right," because it means I'm about to put myself out there in a way that can really aid my growth or help us be more innovative or come up with the next great idea. It's the subjective part of the intellectual idea that risk is a healthy thing and an important thing. So the more I can kind of attune myself to it and reframe it in my own experience, the more likely I am to take the right kind of risks and therefore grow more often. So to me, the OSM also kind of falls in the category of proof. It's the way that I prove to myself that I'm actually doing something and not just thinking about it or talking about it.
Yeah.
So I could talk all day long about how important leadership is and how important love in business is. But if I'm not experiencing the OSM at the same time, it means I'm not really putting it into practice because it all involves experimentation and risk. And that is always at least a little bit scary to most of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Steve, where did you learn your philosophy from? I know that you have had a lot of exposure to a lot of different folks in the leadership, the training and leadership world. But can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what brought you to choosing this career?
Yeah, it wasn't exactly a linear path in the beginning. I started out when I was a much younger man. I started out wanting to be a musician. And I played guitar, been playing guitar since I was 13 years old. And that's what I was going to do. And then early on in my life, I was like 23 years old, 1981, I think. I got married, had a family right away. And I came to understand pretty rapidly that pursuing a career as a musician and feeding people were mutually exclusive pursuits. So I gave up on music, and I needed a job. So I had a friend who took me into his company and in the financial services world and kind of showed me the ropes. And I discovered I was an entrepreneur. And within a few years, I had my own small company. And then over the years, it just kind of evolved into helping, because now I had a business background, and I always had kind of a natural ability to communicate with people, and I loved people and helping them. So I put together my business background with that kind of wiring that I already had. and started doing, consulting and training and all that. And this was back in 1988, 89. And over the years, I've had some amazing mentors. I mentioned Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. Another of my mentors is a guy named Tom Peters, who everybody in business should know his name. The reality is, it's only people 50 years old or older that know Tom. But he's no exaggeration, the greatest management thinker of our age.
Wow.
He wrote a book in the 80s called In Search of Excellence, co-wrote it with a guy named Bob Waterman, and that entirely changed the landscape of business and the expectation of what it means to be in business, from kind of the classic factory style approach to people to a people approach to people. Tom has been credited with being the guy that really kind of set us off on a new path as business people. He's 80 years old now. Just a new book just came out at 80 years old, and is just an incredible guy, incredible thinker. So he's one of my most significant mentors. So my work is very deeply informed by the work of my mentors, and just as, if not more important, by working with a lot of clients over a lot of years in a lot of industries. So I don't think there's any industry that I haven't at least touched in some way. So what that's given me is a couple of things. It's made me an expert in absolutely nothing, other than the one thing that all these businesses have in common, at least for now, which is they're all populated by human beings. So I've gotten this really broad perspective that I can bring to bear on any specific situation. Versus having grown up just in one lane and trying to extrapolate from that what's universal. I really came from a more universal place, and then I can distill that down into what specifically is going to work for a particular company or a particular industry or a particular person within a particular company. So it's a journey. I'm a student. I mean, I have a very strong opinion and a point of view on things. But I didn't make any of this up. I didn't make it up. It's all based on learning and observation, and much of it from my clients. And every time I'm in an engagement with a client, I'm learning something new about dynamics that I can then apply to other clients when they need help. So it's been a really fascinating endeavor. It's my life's work. I still play music, but I don't feel like I sacrificed that in order to do this, because this is it's just become a big part of who I am, and vice versa.
That's amazing, Steve. Wow. I love that. And I'm also curious, how things might have shifted with your work since the start of the pandemic, and how you've actually seen companies change because of the pandemic, and also where you think kind of the future is heading towards when it comes to culture and work.
When we first started sequestering, and then all of a sudden everybody became proficient on Zoom and other related virtual meeting kind of approaches. It was a really interesting time, and I was riffing on this quite a bit back then. I started to hear things like "now more than ever." Now more than ever. So what I was saying is, I'm hearing the words "now more than ever," "now more than ever," and it was like, now more than ever, love is important. Now more than ever, trust is important. Now more than ever, connection is important. Now more than ever, support is important. Now more than ever, culture and teamwork is important. And and my first response was, wait, now more than it's always been true. It's now more than ever, maybe, but it's always now more than ever for this stuff, because it's always important. But what happened was that, ironically, the separation that we went through made us realize how important it is to be connected. So what changed? I think maybe a heightened awareness of how important these ideas are. I mean, I had people say to me, "Wow, Farber, your book, Love is Just Damn Good Business." I said, "Really good timing, man. really good timing, right? For that book to come out during the pandemic, because, wow, that's what everybody's said. Well, it's not really good timing. The book came out in 2019. It's like it was already out when this happened. It wasn't some genius move. But it brought the importance of these things into sharper relief. The challenge that is created is that, boy, there's just a number of things. For one, I think the upside is we've gotten better at the virtual stuff. And I think that presents some really great opportunities. So we're hearing the terminology of like the hybrid work experience now, right? So some of it's virtual, some of it's in person. And I think that's really the direction we're moving. And I like that because there is some advantage to being at home and working. And we will never, ever take the place of face-to-face. There's a dynamic that happens face-to-face that you just will never be able to recreate. So we want that too. So why not have both of those things? And I think we're moving more and more in that direction. I think that's a very positive thing. The challenge is that and it kind of ties in with this whole dynamic of what a lot of people are calling the Great Resignation, right? People just tuning out, leaving, going somewhere else. That to me is a culture issue. It's very difficult for me to leave a place that I love being a part of, right? Even if I'm getting a little bit more money down the street or whatever. If I get a lot more money, sure, I'm going to pay attention to that. But a lot of times it's a matter of I'm not fulfilled here, so I'm going to look somewhere else. It comes right back around to the culture conversation. So the challenge that we're experiencing now is that in some places, in many places, where they had a great culture pre-pandemic, because people were coming to work and they were spending time together and they had like a corporate campus or a great building or whatever it was. And then boom, it all got blown apart. And then as people started to come back to the office, they're looking around and saying, what the hell happened to our culture? So where do we go from here? So I think this is the time where all of us who are in the business world, all of us need to take a new, fresh look at our culture. Given what we've all been through the last few years and, looking ahead to the future, this is the time to reculture, to recreate, to evolve, because I think we've all had a very visceral experience of how important culture is. And many of us, we've had that experience through what seemed like the removal of it for a while. So looking ahead to the future, I really think that, again, this intention of creating an experience for everybody involved that they're really going to love is going to be more and more mainstream. And it will take shape in ways that we can't even imagine yet. I think technology, when used well, is really going to help us in that endeavor. And we're still human, and this is putting our attention on this is probably the most significant way that, for people who are afraid of, an AI wave that's going to make human beings, irrelevant somehow. Our biggest protection against that is to come back to what makes us most human and bring that more to bear in the way we do business every day.
Yeah, amazing. So, what a lesson it's been for all of us the last couple of years and how that's transformed work. I want to talk a little bit about the 3 ways or the 3 keys to becoming greater than yourself in leadership and why you think that this is important for leaders to master. And I took this directly from one of your books.
You've been doing some reading. Yeah, thank you. So again, I'll give a little context for that. So the title of my 3rd book it's called Greater Than Yourself. And the premise is, once again, based on my observation in working with a lot of companies for a lot of years, is that the greatest leaders, and I'm not talking about historical leaders, I'm talking about leaders within organizations, leaders that have a direct impact on our lives every day. The greatest leaders never focus the attention on their own greatness. They don't shine the spotlight on themselves. What they do, in fact, is invest themselves in others so as to raise them up and to raise them up beyond themselves. So the greatest leaders are the ones who make others greater than themselves. So you can think of it as, if you want, as like mentoring on steroids. And if you think, from a spiritual perspective, if you think about what's required for you or for me to, with intention, lift somebody up so that they're better at this, whatever this is, than I am. It really requires keeping our own ego in check, right?
Yeah,
it requires it's such a significant act of love and giving and generosity. It's an act of philanthropy, really, but not philanthropy in the way that we typically think of it, which is giving money to a person or a cause that we believe in. But it's giving ourselves our knowledge, our wisdom, our contacts, our connections, our giving all of that to a person that we believe in order to see them go on to do even more than we've been able to do. So what that requires is there are three tenets to it, what I call expand yourself, give yourself, and replicate yourself. So first of all, in order to really be able to do that well, we have to work on ourselves. And it requires an expansion on a very concrete level, and also on more, we could call it a more spiritual level. So on a concrete level, the more I can expand my own skills, capabilities, experience, contacts, network, etc., the more expanded I am there, the better I am equipped to help other people. Right?
Right.
The more I have, the more I can give. The more I have, the more I can share with other people. So that's one aspect of it. The other is it requires an expansion of self, an expansion of my experience of what it means to be. So if I experience myself as an isolated individual, ego-based person who lives in a zero-sum world, then everything I give to somebody, I'm subtracting from myself.
Right.
It's a very limited view. So the expanded view is, no, I can give all day long, but it doesn't detract from me. In fact, it expands me. So that's what I mean by expand yourself. There's a lot to it. In the business world, and when I'm working with clients and all that, I focus more on the expansion of capability, your own capability and knowledge and experience. Okay, and then give yourself that's the act of investing in somebody else. So I'm expanding myself in order to give myself, and what that requires is a reinterpreting this idea of knowledge is power, right? So the way a lot of people interpret the phrase knowledge is power, it's the more knowledge I have, the bigger advantage I have over you. The more knowledge I have, the more powerful I am, because it makes me, it gives me some leg up over you. Again, that's a zero-sum game mentality. So it's not the hoarding of knowledge that's power. It's the giving of knowledge that's where the real power comes from. So yes, knowledge is power as long as you give it away. So in organizations, what that looks like a lot of times is that, I'm not going to share what I know with anybody else, because then I lose my competitive edge. So you get silos and you get really negative internal competition and all that. So instead of saying, hey, look what I learned. Hey, look who I met. You should talk to this person. You should learn this lesson too that I just learned, or you should, listen to this information that I just got. You should know this too. That's giving yourself. And that's where the real power of knowledge comes in. And then finally, replicating yourself is really about, it's the pay it forward idea. So if I'm going to invest in you, if I'm going to be your GTY is what I call it for short, greater than yourself, your GTY mentor, then I'm going to do this for you and with you because I love you and I believe in you. And I'm not going to ask for anything in return except one thing, and that's you do this for somebody else as well. So that's the replication piece. And then you, the agreement is that you have the same agreement with whoever it is that you're helping. So that's the pay it forward piece. And that's the way that we can change the world. We can certainly change a culture within a company that way. But, and if you expand that out through the broadest ripple effects of that kind of approach, that's how we change the world with the capital W too. So we don't have to sit back and wait for some super influential, globally recognized leader, riding a giant white horse, riding in with thunderbolts and, that classic kind of hero, leader is hero. We don't need that. We need all of us to engage in this. So my hope is that it's a very empowering message for everybody, because it's not about sitting back and waiting for somebody else to change the world. It's how can I change the world that I have direct influence over every day? And this greater than yourself approach is a very powerful way of doing that.
That's amazing. And I love that you talk about the zero-sum game versus kind of a win-win universe, which is really important. It's kind of like the underlying principle of these concepts, because I think a lot of people at work think that, there's only a part of the pie for them. And so there's a lot of competition, and that just creates a really toxic culture. So I love that you are, pushing for the shift of a win-win reality, in that, like, it's more of an expansive and infinite, place to share knowledge and, expand that for everyone, rather than take for yourself.
Yeah, it's a really important point, and it's one of the reasons that I love focusing in the business world, because it is the context of business that makes that a really provocative idea. Because there is, in your typical business, there is a zero-sum sort of reality in certain contexts. So, for example, there's one CEO. What if you want to be CEO and I want to be CEO? And that person wants to be CEO, but there's only one. So that means one person becomes the CEO and the others of us don't. So that's kind of a zero-sum kind of a thing. So what it does is it creates this dynamic where all the bad behaviors fall out of it. I start hoarding knowledge, and it gets political, and but the irony is that I really believe the person who's has the better chance of becoming the CEO is the one who's helping as many people as possible, because they're going to get better results, for one thing. But that person is also going to understand that, I might want the CEO job, but it doesn't mean that it's the best thing. Maybe there's some other reality that I'm not aware of yet. Maybe it's a different company. Maybe it's a different role in which I'll be even happier and, have more influence. I mean, we honestly don't know. So it's the abundance mindset that says, sure, yes, I believe, given everything I know right now, I want that. But the way I'm going to get there is by not, creating a dynamic that's going to hurt other people, or rule out every other possibility for myself either.
Right. Absolutely. And words to live by. Steve, we're coming to time, but I wanted to ask last two questions. What has surprised you the most on this journey, looking back on your career and working with so many different types of clients? It could be anything, like things that have surprised you about human nature, about this work, about your perspective shifting.
Yeah. Well, I think the most surprising thing, if I just think back to when I started advocating for this approach to business, the most surprising, I'm happy to say, the most surprising thing is how little resistance I get to it. I mean, it's not unusual to have resistance like right in the first little bit of time, right? Because of all the baggage associated with the word. It's like it's not uncommon. I had somebody tell me recently at a speech I gave just last month that, she said to me afterwards, she says, "Oh, that was great. Thank you so much." She said, "But I got to say, in the first couple of minutes, I thought, oh, this is going to be, this is going to be terrible." He's a love guy. But it's kind of the knee-jerk reaction because of all of our stereotypes associated with it. But I get very little resistance to the idea when people hear the context for it. So that's been surprising. The other thing is that I'm surprised. This might not feel as positive, but I don't think it's a negative thing. I am an optimist to my core. I think a natural born optimist. I think optimism is genetically encoded in my DNA somehow. And then I look around at the world that we apparently live in right now, which is characterized by so much, polarity and strife and conflict and all kinds of things that we could point to that say we are just screwed. So the way that I'm experiencing it right now is that I am still an optimist. I just have to work harder at it nowadays. So what I'm learning about myself is that really optimism is in many ways a choice. I never felt like it was a choice before. It was just kind of natural. But now I'm finding that, I can really choose that perspective, which means that that's probably true for most people, because I don't consider myself to be particularly unusual. So if that's true for me, it's probably true for a lot of people. And my hope is that we can all choose to be more optimistic because, again, there's a ton of research on this, none of it my own. But, people who tend to be more optimistic tend to have better outcomes. Not surprising, right? What you put your attention on grows and all that. So if I have a bias of optimism that things are going to work out well, they're probably more likely to work out well. So yes. learned optimism there's a whole body of work around that exists out there. I encourage people to check into. So I'm finding that I have to do that more, and that is if you would have asked me that question 10 years ago and said, "Yeah, think forward 10 years. Do you think you're going to have to work hard at being an optimist?" I would have told you, well, of course not. But here I am. So that's surprising.
Amazing. Oh, well, yeah. And I love that what you focus on, you bring more of, you see more of in your life, whatever your awareness is on. And I definitely can validate that, having connected with you in person, that you are definitely an optimist. So Steve, are there any resources that you can point folks to in order to learn more about you and your work and how they can potentially sign you up?
Yeah, sure. So stevefarber.com is the place where all my stuff lives. I mean, I'm active on social media as well, but there's a lot of videos and articles and all that. stevefarber.com, extremeleadership.com also, and that tends to focus a little bit more on the work that we do in corporations and whatnot. So you could bounce around between those two sites. But the thing that I would encourage people to really avail themselves of is the daily audio message. So if you go to, it should pop up when you go to stevefarber.com, but if not, if you go to dailyaudioMessage.com, I have, it gets delivered through your email Monday through Friday. Most of the message, it's all, as the name suggests, audio messages. Most of them are around 2 minutes, some of them less. And all having to do with all the kinds of things we've been talking about here today and related ideas around extreme leadership. And I'm telling you, of all the things that I've done over the years, I get more positive feedback on this than anything I've done. And, things like, I'll get an email from somebody saying, "Oh, I really needed to hear this today." So, well, I knew that. I knew you did. That's why I sent it to you. And it's lovely how it just kind of, things just work out sometimes, but I'll meet people and say, "Oh, I listen to your messages every day." And it's really cool. So you sign up for it. And if you don't like it, unsubscribe. And that's the end of that. But I encourage people to give it a try.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so we'll also include this in the show notes so that people can navigate towards that. Steve, thank you so much for your time. This was so lovely, and I feel incredibly inspired from this conversation. I'm sure that folks listening are as well.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure, Yasmin, and I'm looking forward to more conversation.
Yes, yes, yes. So for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about why love is just damn good business with Steve Farber. And you can tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and higher consciousness. Thanks again.